aspiring Pokemon Masters, I am Corey from SKG 9000, and welcome back to Pokémon Month! Today I wanted to do something a little different for the end of Pokémon Month. I wanted to take a look at a part of the Pokémon franchise, which I believe was incredibly instrumental into turning Pokémon into one of the most iconic pieces of pop culture. Of course, I am speaking of the long-running and seemingly never-ending Pokémon anime series. Like most people who grew up with the original Pokémon games, I also watched the anime series pretty religiously. The anime told the story of young Pokémon trainer Ash Ketchum, known in the Japanese version as Satoshi. The series chronicles his journey across the various regions of the Pokémon world, where he makes friends and catches Pokémon to be the best like no one ever was. It was only natural that with the success of the series, it would eventually make its way to the big screen, and it did just that with the release of Pokémon, the first movie. The most arrogant movie title of all time. And considering that my YouTube channel is based around anime reviews, I've decided to review this movie and see if it still holds up after all of these years. This review will be looking at the English dub of the film, which was originally released by 4Kids, but I will also be acknowledging the Japanese version. So kick back, relax, and enjoy as I review Pokémon, the first movie. Mewtwo Strikes Back. Before I begin the review, let me try and paint a picture of what it was like to be a young Pokémon fan in 1999. The first Pokémon games, Red and Blue, were released on September 28, 1998, and went on to blow our collective minds and infect nearly every single sector of pop culture. Video games, toys, an anime series, breakfast cereal, a wildly popular card game, which was so intrusive it was actually banned from my school. At the time, I was completely obsessed with Pokemon, like, really obsessed. And in many ways that obsession continues to this day, as I have been there on launch day for the release of every major game in the series. And only 1 year after the release of the first 2 games, we were treated to the first Pokémon movie, which came out on November 10th, 1999. I was there with my friends on opening night, and the fanfare behind this movie was huge. Like, Whale Lord huge. With the never-ending epic TV commercials, tie-in merchandise, and the fact that theater goers were given an exclusive Pokemon promo card with a ticket purchase just sweetened the deal. It was mass market manipulation at its best, and to be perfectly honest, we all ate it up like a Snorlax at a Vegas buffet. Not to mention, the movie starred Mewtwo, the most powerful and badass Pokemon of all. As a young and stupid kid, the movie sort of blew my face off. Nowadays, there are an obscene amount of Pokemon movies, but how has this film aged over the years? First off, there are actually 2 versions of the film. The original theatrical version, and an extended cut which is known as the Kanzenban version. The Kanzenban version features an additional 10-minute opening, all about the origins of Mewtwo, and it does a great job of fleshing out his character. In fact, the first 21 minutes of this film are probably the best thing about it. For this review, I will be looking at the full extended cut of the film. Our story begins in a beautiful and lush jungle inhabited by all sorts of wild Pokémon. I especially love the scene of all the Butterfree flying through the forest. We learn that a group of scientists are looking for the rare and elusive psychic Pokémon, Mew, who is thought to be extinct, but in actuality just sort of hangs around trolling people at its leisure, especially Team Rocket. The scientists don't find Mew, but they do come across an ancient shrine dedicated to him, which just so happens to hold a Mew fossil. Using this Mew fossil, they then clone it into the genetically modified, Frankenstein-esque Pokemon creation, Mewtwo. The best part of this opening sequence is that the main scientist, Dr. Fuji, is not only trying to create this Pokemon for Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, but he is also using his research to bring back his dead daughter, Amber. Dr. Fuji keeps her consciousness in a glass tube, which is also a veiled representation of her soul. A young and confused Mewtwo is able to psychically link and communicate with Amber as well as 3 other experimental Pokemon clones, which just so happen to be a Bulbasaur, a Charmander, and a Squirtle. Amber teaches Mewtwo and the Pokemon clones about the world and how it works, leading to some beautiful and fun imagery. But suddenly, the film takes a very dark turn, as the clones die along with Amber, leaving Mewtwo alone and wondering why it exists, and what its ultimate purpose is. Mewtwo is the only survivor and its memories are repressed forcefully by the scientists, leaving it in a state of limbo and extreme frustration. This is some extremely heavy material for young viewers, and I commend the series for not talking down to its young audience by shying away from the tragic details and the fact that Mewtwo is essentially going through an existential crisis. Time gradually passes with Mewtwo growing larger and having continuous visions of the real Mew before suddenly exploding from his test tube. The scientists are elated, but Mewtwo is pissed the hell off as he uses his newfound powers to destroy the lab and everyone in it. Yes, that's right, Mewtwo straight up murders everyone who created him, turning the island laboratory into a fiery hellscape. Mewtwo is then found by the leader of Team Rocket, who presents Mewtwo with an interesting proposition. He claims he will help Mewtwo in learning how to use his powers, but in actuality, he is simply using him as a living weapon. He gives Mewtwo this amazingly badass set of armor, which not only protects him, but also suppresses his great psychic power. Mewtwo works for Team Rocket by helping them capture Pokemon and defeating Pokemon trainers in the Viridian City Gym. We even get to see Gary Oak losing to the powerhouse Pokemon. As more time progresses, Mewtwo becomes more confused as to why he was created and what he should do with his life. Giovanni stupidly tells him the truth and Mewtwo violently breaks free, creating more destruction and returning to the charred site of his birth. Mewtwo declares war on all humans and Pokemon as he plans his ultimate revenge. This opening is frankly perfect in my opinion. It feels so much more different than the regular anime series. The intro itself is pretty lengthy at 21 minutes, but I have to admit it is super entertaining. However, it's not long until the movie begins to feel like an extended Pokemon episode, when Ash, Pikachu, and all his friends are introduced into the film. Mewtwo concocts a crazy plan to destroy all of humanity and Pokemon by creating a destructive storm with his psychic powers. It is worth noting that this is not his motive in the Japanese version and was simply created for the English dub. First, he begins by inviting the most powerful Pokemon trainers to his newly rebuilt island for the ultimate battle test. Ash and his friends Misty and Brock are invited, but Ash's excitement takes a nosedive when Mewtwo reveals himself and his plan for world domination, creating clones of all of the trainers' Pokemon so that it can eradicate all humans and the Pokemon that follow them. Ash tries to convince Mewtwo that humans and Pokemon can work together, but Mewtwo refuses to believe that Pokemon and people could ever be companions. However, Mewtwo is confronted by the rare Phantom Pokemon Mew, and the ultimate battle between real Pokemon and the Pokemon clones begins. The bulk of the movie is essentially an excuse to see your favorite Pokemon in action, and on that front, it really does deliver. The opening scene even features a Pokemon battle between Ash and a nameless Pokemon trainer. This trainer uses a Donphan, which, at the time, was a Pokemon that no one had ever seen before. I distinctly remember the theater audience erupting with cheers when this Pokemon rolled onto the scene. Ash's Bulbasaur makes quick work of the Pachyderm Pokemon with one blast from his Solar Beam. We also get to see Ash's Squirtle take out a Machamp with Bubble Beam, which is just plain stupid, by the way. And of course, his godlike Pikachu destroys the rest of this guy's team with ease. Even this Golem, which makes no sense as Golem would be resistant to Pikachu, but whatever. The anime series clearly doesn't follow the game's established rules. This scene also features the full-length version of the original Pokemon theme, which is both cheesy and nostalgically awesome all at the same time. Team Rocket also returns, and strictly just for comic relief, which works perfectly fine as they are bumbling but lovable idiots. There is a running joke where throughout the entire movie, Mew keeps following them around, but they never notice until the end of the film. Other Pokemon highlights is the mail-delivering Dragonite, which is so adorable and doofy looking. What is strange is that this Dragonite doesn't appear to be a clone at all, but it still manages to work for Mewtwo. The other trainers in the film are nameless as far as I can tell, and they barely have any personality, but boy do they have some cool Pokemon like Pidgeot, Gyarados, Venusaur, and Blastoise, just to name a few. We get to see them all fighting against their respective clones, which is not like your typical Pokemon battle at all. They punch, kick, bite, scratch, and maul the ever-living shit out of each other. It's honestly kind of hard to watch, and it leads to the worst part of the dubbed version of the film. While Mewtwo and Mew have an epic battle to see who is superior, the other Pokemon battle until they are exhausted. This scene uses a song called Brother My Brother, which frankly just sucks Pokeballs. It does not fit into the scene at all. The Japanese version is played way more serious and even has a completely different message. In the English dub, there's this anti-fighting message, but this goes against the rule of the Pokemon world. Pokemon like to battle and fight with their trainers. Maybe it's just that they use the over-the-top powers and here it's more brutal and hand-to-hand combat, but it's still a pretty hypocritical message. There are also a number of unintentionally funny scenes, like Psyduck versus Psyduck, which pretty much goes nowhere, and watching Pikachu get repeatedly slapped by his clone. It happens so many times that it gets to the point of hilarity. Even Mew's motivations are completely different in the Japanese version. In the original, Mew feels that all original Pokemon are superior to the clones as they're natural. This paints Mew in a darker light and gives him some anti-hero qualities. In the English version, he talks about real strength coming from the heart, which is not only ham-fisted and stupid, but just comes across as pandering. It almost feels like an old G.I. Joe PSA. There's even an anti-racism bit from Meowth in the English version when his clone refuses to fight. It just makes the whole movie feel stupid as shit, and frankly, it's kind of embarrassing. The human characters are pretty much what you'd expect. Ash playing the stubborn hero. So stubborn, in fact, he basically gets himself killed when he tries to stop Mewtwo and Mew from fighting. But the tears of the crying Pokemon heal him. This even happens in the Japanese version, and they try to make it work in the English version with a throwaway line about the tears of Pokemon having healing powers, but it still comes across as just dumb and lazy. Misty and Brock are just along for the ride, with Misty just spouting exposition and occasionally helping out with her Staryu, and Brock constantly trying to tame his raging libido. Speaking of which, Officer Jenny and even Nurse Joy appear in the film, with Joy being kidnapped and mind-controlled by Mewtwo to do his bidding. The best human characters are Team Rocket without a doubt. They are stupid, but hey, they're also supposed to be. They actually trick Ash and friends by dressing up as Vikings. Poor Meowth is actually forced to be the figurehead of their Viking ship. This scene leads to maybe the most cringeworthy scene of the film, where Brock comments about seeing the Vikings, and Ash replies, "They mostly live in Minnesota." One thing that I really do love about the film is the design of Mewtwo himself and his island. It's dark and gothic and gloomy. His cloning lab is also something straight out of a Ridley Scott's Alien movie, being both otherworldly and creepily hypnotic. The birth of the cloned Pokemon is awe-inspiring and grossly disturbing all at the same time. Mewtwo also manages to catch the other Pokemon's trainers in these wicked-looking Pokeballs, which can also catch a Pokemon when it's already inside of its regular Pokeball. There's a great scene in the film where Pikachu is running up this massive spiral staircase trying to run away from these evil Pokeballs, and Ash even uses his body as a shield as he's constantly getting pummeled by Mewtwo's Pokeballs. Ha ha! Dangly parts. Mewtwo is truly the highlight, and he manages to carry the whole film for me personally. He's both badass and extremely intimidating, and his fighting style against Mew is like something out of Dragon Ball Z. I also love the way he escapes from the lab in the beginning with all of those creepy robotic arms reaching out for him, only for Mewtwo to blow everything away with his awesome psychic powers, and then proceeds to kill everyone in his wake. About Mewtwo actually killing the scientists, it's mostly implied, but this was still a pretty bold move for the Pokemon anime series to make. Mewtwo also makes use of a cloned Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise, which is poetic, as his original cloned friends were the base forms of these Pokemon. It also means we get to see a great Charizard versus Charizard battle. Seeing two Charizards battle against each other in the moonlight blew my freaking mind as a kid, and it still does today. Mewtwo's story also dives into themes about identity, abandonment, self-worth, and finding one's place in the world. This is even more pronounced in the Japanese version, as Mewtwo even asks Dr. Fuji if Mew is his mother or his father, or even if God created him. This is unexpected but welcome, and definitely lifts the movie to loftier introspective heights. Mew is also very interesting. For the most part, it spends the movie flying and floating around looking extremely cute, and by the end it steps up to the plate to stop Mewtwo from ethnically cleansing the Pokemon world. As for how the movie ends, well, it's pretty predictable. Ash is healed, Mewtwo and Mew realize the error of their ways, and Mewtwo and the clones leave to live in peace. But not before Mewtwo conveniently erases everyone's memory, making their adventure and the lessons they learned completely pointless. Pokémon the first movie is flawed. If you want to see this, I recommend the Japanese version, as its message is clearer and the music choices are more appropriate. Everything else, for the most part, is the same. The animation itself is slightly better than the TV series, but the overall design of Mewtwo and his island make the film seem more grandiose. The film is also riddled with mistakes, from the dialogue to the naming of certain Pokemon, and even some weird animation and incorrect colors. There's even a mysterious 5th trainer who tries to fly to Mewtwo's island on a Fearow, but never shows up. Huh, I guess she's dead. The movie also tied into 3 episodes of the Pokemon anime series, like when Gary battles Mewtwo in his kick-ass armor, and Mewtwo escaping from Giovanni. For Pokemon fans, it still manages to entertain, especially the younger viewers. The film was recently released on Blu-ray, and this version looks pretty great, but it is missing the opening origin of Mewtwo, which is the best part of the movie. Still, I can easily look past its faults and recommend this to all Pokemon fans of all ages. Also, I will touch on this briefly. This movie also opens with an anime short called Pikachu's Vacation, which was basically just an excuse to pad out for time and to introduce some Generation 2 Pokemon, like Snubbull and Meryl. It also has some weird-ass imagery that will make you feel like you are on acid. So, is the first Pokemon movie the best of the franchise? No, but it is still very watchable and continues to be one of the most nostalgic Pokemon memories I have. I give it 3 Meowth figureheads out of 5. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that was my review of Pokémon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. It's kind of middle of the road for me, but I still think it's a pretty entertaining movie. But I want to hear your thoughts, and you can tell me in the comments section below. Did you have an opportunity to see the very first Pokemon movie when it was released in theaters? Do you like this film? Do you not like this film? Please tell me why in the comments section below. If you have any favorite scenes or Pokemon that appeared in this film. What's your favorite Pokemon movie, and what do you want to see from the future of the Pokemon franchise? Thank you guys so much for watching this review. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be able to see all of our latest anime and Pokemon videos. We also have a weekly podcast show called The Powerful Nerdcast, which you should definitely check out. Also, if you liked this review, please give it a like and share it with your friends, and leave me a comment or 2. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.